again, lovies, it's David McGillivray here, horror icon, comedy legend, and this is Little Did You Know, the Chat Show. It's a show in which I talk to people I find interesting. I hope you agree. My guest today, well, I think he's the most glamorous guest I've had since Karen Krzanovich. Sorry, everyone. That's the way it is. It's a fact. Live with it. I mean, for a start, he's from the Bahamas. He's a former dancer and choreographer who's been in London for something like 20 years. He now works for Recon. I'm going to let him tell you what Recon is, although the chances are, if you're watching this, you may already know. He's also been in a couple of my films. How glamorous is that? And what else? Oh, yes, I know. This isn't the first chat we've had. I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago because I'm writing a very spicy article for a magazine called Attitude. Now, I wonder what that could be about. I'm teasing you this week, lovies, but I can promise you that we will deal with all this, although not all of it here on YouTube. No, I'm sorry, the X-rated stuff is only on Patreon. So if you're a subscriber, join us there after the show. We'll be waiting for you. And if you're not a subscriber, here's the link. Have a look, see if you like what you see, and it's only £1 a month, and you won't be sorry you paid it. Time to meet my guest. He's waiting patiently while I go through all this nonsense. Will you please say hello to the very wonderful Antoin Strachan?
Hi. Thank you very much for having me on today, David.
Entirely my pleasure, Antoine. Now, if you weren't talking to me, would you be power walking?
My power walking for today would have already been done. I guess everybody figured out at some point that they need to have some kind of routine or something they have during the lockdown to keep them a little sane. I'm always a bit of an early morning riser anyway. So I'm up every morning at 6 and 6:15, I'm out the door. I power walk 10K every morning and do a little home workout before I begin work at 9 o'clock in the morning. So there's quite a little bit squeezed in. That includes my coffee and oats for the morning as well before I begin. So.
Well, I can tell you, everyone, that it's working because I've seen the pictures on Facebook, and Antoine does have magnificent legs.
Well, I'm guessing that these are, I guess the remnants of my dancer's legs. I stopped dancing some years ago, but I guess these are things that you never really lose. And I'm also a little bit of I have become more of a cyclist than I have been before. It's also been one of those things, I guess, during the lockdown that I discovered I can use for getting outdoors and exercising, and it still keeps me completely away from people. So I feel a lot safer if I'm on the bike, and it's been absolutely amazing, the different corners and other little nooks and crannies of London that I've explored just randomly cycling around. You set out in the day and I think I'm going to cycle maybe 10 or 15K, and by the time I get home I've realized I've cycled 30K. So it's been really lovely.
But also, you are a foodie. Are you eating healthily as well?
I No, not necessarily. I'm one of those people, you hear the cliche all the time. I live to eat, I don't eat to live. I really love my food. And it's probably one of the reasons why I also have to get up and walk every morning, because I'm trying to work off probably something naughty that I had the day before. And I have to admit that every day in the lockdown has not been a complete cooking day. You know, there are lots of lovely little apps and services that you can get food delivered. And there are a number of places around where I live also that it's very easy for me to walk, 3 to 5 minutes, and I can have something taken away. So it's been super handy. So my love of food is also one of the reasons why I power walk 10K.
Splendid. Now, let's get this over with. Tell us briefly, what is Recon?
Well, I think we'll go back just a little bit before that. The company is actually called T101, and Recon is actually just the product. And some of you may know what it is already. And I'm guessing what it is depends on who I'm chatting to. If I'm chatting to my mother or my nan, I work for a tech company that produces a very well-known app that's geared towards, the gay community. If I'm chatting to, of course, other gay friends, well, I mean, Recon's the world's largest hookup app for guys into gear and fetish. We do a number of parties and things here in London, across Europe, across the US. We've also done, campaigns in Australia, across Canada, and a few other places as well. We do kind of get around, and I think, I've been nicknamed at one point or another, the fun maker. I'm the events producer, so I'm the party planner. So I'm that guy that, creates the spaces where people can do the naughty things they love to do.
Well, it's another reason why you are so glamorous, Antoine, because you're constantly flitting all over the. When we spoke before, my passport is quite full. That's an understatement. More about Recon in just a minute, but first let's go back to growing up in the Bahamas. Nassau.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Nassau, went to school in Nassau. Um, my family background is actually quite extensive. I have a very large extended family. The family is quite well known. My granddad is the conductor of the National Youth Orchestra. He has a jazz band, has a music business, was also a show conductor. So, my previous career, I'm guessing starting in entertainment, is just something that's always been in the blood. The first instrument was shoved in my hand at the age of 5. I played flute, clarinet, and saxophone quite proficiently. Played tennis competitively as well, but they wanted me to study medicine, and I wanted to dance, and that was where the the family split then came. And so, of course, I ran after doing what I love doing.
Did you think you could have a career as a dancer at home, or did you know that you had to go abroad?
Well, I started, but I started my dance career in the Bahamas, and I'm very fortunate that there were a number of places where you could work professionally as a dancer, but there were only, I guess, 2 that would be deemed as long-term financially viable. Very soon you realize that you become a big fish in a small pond. And I thought, if I want to improve and get better, then I have to get out of here. And that was the beginning of working for a cruise line and living and training in New York for 6 years.
Why New York?
I think for me, in my mind, it was the epicenter of, if you wanted to be a dancer or a performer and you wanted to train, this was the place to go. New York was where it was at. And I thought, well, if I'm going to get knocked down and I'm going to be forced to, starve and struggle, then I might as well do it where everybody else is doing it together. Then I'm not doing it alone. And it's probably been one of the most incredible things I've ever done.
Did you perform in New York as well?
My time in New York was mostly training and teaching, teaching as a teacher's assistant, but mostly training. So I would go away and perform, let's say do a cruise, a contract for 6 months, and then go back to New York and intensely train for 5 or 6 months, go back to another contract, which has been really, yeah, it's really good. I think one is still, I'd say, best decision I ever made.
Well, while we're in New York right now, Antoine, I want you to tell us the story about one of your favorite clubs there, because it's one of the few that is still open.
Yeah.
And it sounded like a great place. I'm speaking of something which is called the Cock.
I think it's what's really interesting. I'm gonna kind of out myself now, because people who know me, they would think like this is the me. This is the everyday look of me. A little bit kind of preppy, looks like the guy you want to introduce to your mom. But, I don't deny, like most gay guys, we have our little fun and our naughty sides. And I think moving to New York and coming from a small country like the Bahamas was such an eye opener for me. So I really had the opportunity to explore all the dark sides and the naughtiness. Um, and one place where I felt very easy to be and, not judged, and it's like everybody's here for exactly the same reason, was at the Cock. So, you'd be out in the village and having dinner or drinks with friends. And, later at night when you feel you need a little bit of something, I'm going to the Cock for a drink, or I'm going down to the East Village, and have a drink. And it was really nice because it was a small, bar upstairs. And then you went down these really very narrow stairs, and often it was completely dark in the downstairs. You could see nothing or no one. And it was really good fun, feeling the hands and feeling around. And it was almost like someone blindfolded you and you had to, find the spot in the dark. So that made it really, really good fun, because you would often, fumble upon other people doing other things. But this, of course, was the time, mid to late 90s, when the AIDS crisis was still quite rampant and many things were closed. And spaces like this had monitors. And I guess at the Cock, they used drag queens for the monitors. So the drag queens would have flashlights, and every once in a while, the flashlight would come on. They felt the hand, and they were very keen to make sure that people were making safer choices if they were, engaging in any extracurricular activities. And, if you weren't seen to be using protection, you were very politely asked to leave the venue.
Well, I can reveal now that the article I'm writing is the history of sex clubs in London, and I found out that the Cock came to London. A guy called Wayne Shires
Yeah.
loved the Cock as well, and he opened his own version in London. How about that? It's gone now, but it was very successful.
I can imagine it was.
Antoine, how did you come to London, and how did you end up in one of the most famous musicals in the West End?
Well, when I was still living in the Bahamas, I met um, a very amazing man that we dated for a while. And then we became best of friends. I knew the entire family. He knew my family, I knew his family, and we remained friends for many years. And I used to come to London for holidays, I think also from the mid 90s. We often stayed with his mom. His mom lived out in Chingford. And we would just, roll into town. He would go off and doing his bits, and I'd be, jumping around at Heaven. And I think at that time, Brompton's used to be my favorite club. So you can imagine schlepping from Chingford to Brompton's, for a night out and then going back in the morning time.
For
And
those who don't know, Chingford is in East
in
London,
East London.
a long way from the West End, yes.
Yeah. And then at one point, Mark left Nassau and came back to London, and I came to visit after a job, which initially started out as a visit that was only going to be a few months. And while I was here, and I was doing some training at a very popular dance studio in Covent Garden, and then some other friends, actually another friend who's also a writer and a filmmaker, and they're like, "You're having such a good time here. Why don't you stay?" And I didn't think I would stay, and I just eventually ended up getting a lawyer and investigating and doing what I needed to do. And I think at that point in time, there was a law here called the Unmarried Partners Concession, where if you can prove that you had a partner living together for 2 years or more. And of course, this was, Mark and I, we were basically living together for, I think, 11 years or so at this point, before he moved back. So that was my move into London. It did take a while and lots of hoops to jump through, especially dealing with all the legal stuff, but it got approved. I always knew I wanted to be a dancer anyway. And the day when I got the letter that my residence was granted, I sent a letter to the casting director of The Lion King. Says, "Listen, I'm here, I'm available, and I'd love to audition." And a few days later, they called me in for an audition, and 2 weeks later, I was starting rehearsals.
How long were you in The Lion King?
6 years as dance captain.
Goodness, you
Yeah.
you understudied Banzai. What else?
Ed. I understudied Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, so Ed is one of the three hyenas. He's one of the absolute crazy ones that I really, really love doing. So I guess apart from being dance captain, they said to me, well, we're going to make you dance captain. And since you have to learn all the bits, you might as well just remain a swing, which is somebody who can step into other roles, within the main cast. And you can carry a tune. And so therefore you won't only be the dancer swing, you'll also be the singer swing as well. So I was dance captain. 2 years later, I then became the cover for Ed. But during this whole time, I was also a dancer and a singer swing. So extremely busy. I spent a lot of time, in the Lyceum or in studios, teaching and doing rehearsals and doing other things. So it was really great.
Now, we know you're not a dancer now. Was that your last performance in The Lion King?
Yeah, it was my last performance in The Lion King.
So something else came up, and this is a good story as well. And this is how you became. This is how you became events manager at Recon, something completely different. How did it happen?
Well, it's a job I never ever in a million years thought I would ever do, and anyone who knew me also would never assume that this is the job I would do. But it just so happens that I met uh, the owner of Recon when I first came to London, not knowing what Recon was or that that was basically what he did. I knew him as a graphics designer, and when I basically started what was going to be a break in performing. I started working for a producer I worked with from the US, Laura Marakowitz, and she came over and she was producing the tailgate party out of Wembley. She wanted someone to work with her. She goes, I need someone who's as anal and as organized as I am, and I can't think of anybody else who's going to be better than you. And I thought, well, okay, I'm off them for a bit of time, and so I'll do it. And eventually, she said, you're really good at this, and you should consider doing events. And I thought, well, at this point, I was really enjoying having dinner at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday and having a lie-in on Saturday. It's something that I basically hadn't done in almost 25 years. And I think I can really get used to this. So I, made a CV, did a few interviews, got hired by a corporate events company. They were sending me to their offices in Russia. I was moving to Moscow within 2 weeks, and I thought, I guess, as happens to a lot of other, gay guys, you have a bad relationship breakup and you just think, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here, I'm moving. And I was going. And I remember going out to Soho to have a drink, walking past Compton's, and standing in the window was that guy that I knew to be the graphics designer. So I went in to say hi, had a drink. It's like, oh, you're still performing? No, I've left. I'm doing this. I'm now doing events. I've been doing it for about 6 months at this point. I'm leaving town in 2 weeks. He's like, oh, the company I work for, they're looking for an events manager. You should send in your CV. I'm like, who do you work for? He goes, oh, this company called Recon. Like, no idea what it was. And I just remember he picked up one of the gay magazines and showed it to me. Like, they had an ad running in the back of the, I think, both Boys and QX at this time. And I thought, that sounds interesting. So I went home, looked it up online, and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I like it. I'm like, So I went in for the interview the next day, and they asked all sorts of questions about, had I been to fetish parties before, which I had been. I didn't necessarily consider myself a fetish man, but yeah, go ahead.
We're coming up to a break, but first of all, and what I love about this story is that you virtually got the job in 45 minutes, and then
Just about.
the next day, where were you off to?
They said, we'd like to offer you the job, and if you agree, book a flight and a hotel and meet us in Berlin for Folsom Europe. So it was then for me a complete, baptism by fire. Not even out of the, from the frying pan into the fire. It was literally from the counter into the fire. And it was just such an incredible eye opener. I thought, yep, this is a job I can really enjoy doing.
And I love the line you told me. They said something like, do you think it's the sort of job you can do? And you replied, yes, I'm quite used to dressing up.
Yeah, I mean, with an almost 25-year career, basically putting on costumes and adopting a different persona, I didn't see this as any different. I thought, well, I've been dressing up my whole life, so this is easy.
Well, we're going to talk a lot more about Recon in part two. You can rest assured, although we won't be talking here about what happened on Antoine's first night in London. I'm sorry, it's a story only for Patreon subscribers. Now, I can't remember where we first met Antoine, but it was probably me interviewing you about Recon for the aforementioned QX, and then subsequently I asked you to be in a couple of films. The first one was a film called Fragments, and that's available on this BFI DVD, the erotic films of Peter Jerome. And here's an interesting thing. This guy here, do you remember the actor Michael Elphick? Well, that's his brother, Robin. How about that? Anyway, so what I wanted Antoine to do was to take off his clothes so that we could paint some end credits on his naked body. Do you remember that, Antoine, or have
I
you?
remember it very well.
Oh, good. I thought you might have blanked it.
Oh no, I remember it really very well. I had a good time filming it actually.
And then I made another film, and I always hold this up at this stage because it's a peccadillo release, and this is the Peter Jerome, grandfather of gay porn. And there's a big party scene at the end, and I wanted Antoine to go over to Peter Jerome, the star of the film, and talk to him. I don't think I gave him any other direction at all.
No, none whatsoever. But it was really good to talk chat with him as well.
Well, I don't think I've ever asked you to this date. We were just filming all around you. What did you talk about?
We talked. We actually talked about when I lived in New York.
Ah, of course, because Peter had an apartment there, and that's where he made a lot of his films.
Yes.
Have you ever seen a Peter Jerome film?
Not any of the full ones. I only basically knew more about them since doing the film with you, which then of course made me go out and look. I was like, yes, okay, I have to look them up and read it. So, and it's absolutely intriguing all the stuff he'd done previously.
He had a great life. We're going to have a look at the trailer for Peter Jerome, grandfather of gay porn, right now. Unfortunately, Antoine isn't in it, but there's a lot of other interesting stuff. I hope you enjoy it. Have a look at this and join us again in a couple of minutes.
Hello, I'm Peter Jerome, and I've spent the last 50 years or so making gay porn movies.
To see a Peter Jerome film, I mean, it was just impossible because this stuff was so dangerous and illegal.
Peter had a way of taking you in to his own fantasy world.
On the outside, he looks like a perfect English gentleman, but he's equally at home with discussing.
He treats the narrative of arousal with such sensitivity and such humour, and God, the men are absolutely gorgeous.
I know I've been labelled the godfather of porn. I rather prefer the granddaddy of porn, but there you go. But I go along with it, I don't care. I've always been rather surprised that there have been other people making little Amy Lamita movies like I did. I'd just say, hi, how are you, blah, blah, blah. I'm Peter. Would you mind if I take a few shots of you or something like that?
Did you join in at any point?
I usually did, yes.
Oh,
yes.
good. I'm glad you didn't go without.
Oh, no.
That's Peter Jerome, grandfather of gay porn. And if you get that on Amazon or wherever you shop, you'll notice in the big party scene at the end at BFI South Bank, my guest talking to Peter Jerome. It's Antoin Strachan. Antoine J. Strachan, isn't it?
Yes.
What?
Jonathan.
It's Jonathan.
Yeah.
That clears that up. Now, we've got to talk a lot more about Recon. Um, what shall I ask first? All right, then, let's just get down to business. Do people come to Recon expecting to have sex?
I would probably say this was maybe a 100% expectation 10, 15 years ago. And now, of course, it has changed quite a bit. The dynamic of the scene has changed quite a lot, and people's expectations when they go to events has also changed a lot. One of the things we realized over time was, yes, people really love and crave the sex element, and that's ideally what it is. But we also know that now people also like the social element. So we also, it's like moving from one venue to another. Very often we had to change because we needed more space to have different types of rooms. People wanted to come out and have sex and have a drink, and that was great. But then they realized, well, we like to dance as well. So we needed to move somewhere where we could have a dance floor. And they were like, well, what about the guys who just want to stand around and chat? So we needed a space where they could also just socially hang out. Well, sometimes I might want to have a quiet moment to get away out of the dark room and just have, some peace to myself. So we needed a chill out area. And then there became a VIP space and all this other things. And then with various forms of fetishes and kinks becoming more popular, you start adding all these other elements and all these various types of rooms to the event. So it's definitely much more about the sex, even though I think that's still the crux of it. But we realize there are people who come and they never go to the dark rooms. They never go to the play areas. They're happy to stand around with their mates and chat and drink.
So you moved out of small venues into much larger venues in order to incorporate all these rooms, and then subsequently you took these parties all round the world. My goodness, it sounds like a fantastic job, is it?
I think people believe it's more glamorous than it actually is. I'm an organizer and a planner, so it's all in my head. I have always been, I guess, lucky to work with a really brilliant team of people to help building it up, and help running it and organize. 8 times out of 10, the venues themselves are really great. The only thing I think that people, I'm not sure they really think about how much effort goes into actually building it up, because these events are primarily very often done in, empty spaces. You have empty walls. It's a blank canvas. So you have to really build everything in. And it doesn't always go to plan. And I think what most people miss is what happens at the end of the night when the lights come on. And it's really like there has been you would think that there has been some kind of explosion. And they also, I don't think, we have to clean it up. And I'm not very precious or fragile about it. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. And I've literally been knee deep, wrist deep, in the cleanup after an event. But it's important to clean and disinfect everything before we store it away. So it has to be done.
So you're there beforehand, you're there throughout, you're there after.
Yeah.
While you're there on show, you're what? Dressed up? We can always find you there if we need to ask you something?
I can most times be found. And if you don't see me, it's always very easy to ask one of the people, on the team or on my events crew, where I am, and somebody will always know where I am. And very often, we always say with events, you spend the whole night sometimes putting out little fires. And it's dealing with people, little issues and quirks and things like sound and something in the bar and a code check or security or something else. So you spend the whole evening sometimes doing this. A really long time ago, I think maybe after my third year into the job, or maybe my fourth, I just decided I won't play while I work. There was so much going on, and it's like I have to always be available in case something happens. I can be found and deal with things easily.
That was going to be my next question. You're working, we can always find you. You're not in the dark room.
If I am, I'm actually replacing hand paper or topping up the condoms or topping up the lube or, putting together a sling that, somebody may have literally shagged apart. I'll tell you a funny story about an event we did with my other colleague, Joffrey. We had two guys in a sling, and the one guy was going so hard at it. The pieces that hold the frame, the X frame at the bottom, started to come apart, and we were there trying to fix it, but the guy wouldn't stop. He's like, just wait, just wait, just wait. And as he kept going, the sling was like, the frame was sliding across the floor as he was going. It was just incredible, and after that, this is one of those things that you learn. After this, it's like, okay, we have to take all the frames and have the pieces welded together so they don't come apart. It's a health and safety thing at this point. But you only learn it after you see. I always say to people who build this furniture, gay men have sex very differently from our, wonderful hetero friends. Very, very differently. Everything has got to be reinforced times 10.
Well, as you say, you live and learn.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you've mentioned the subject of lube and condoms there, Antoine, because it's a subject we can't ignore. So people are having sex together all over the world now, but AIDS has not gone away. So how are you dealing with this?
I think this has been something I've always found very interesting in our travels. We realized a very long time ago how important it was to be able to supply them for people coming to events. And I can also say, from the years I lived in New York, and even from my travels around Europe and to some places across America, this doesn't happen. If you want a condom, you have to go and ask the bartender. Or they only have like a little bowl of condoms and lube at the bar, which is the furthest away from the play area that you can possibly get. So one thing that we've always made sure that we do is to have them readily available. We don't want to be I don't plan to be the sex police. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I'm going to make it possible for you to make a wiser decision if you so choose. So they're always there. And it's interesting to hear people say, this is happening and I saw this and I saw that, and people don't use them. They don't know. We very often go through 6,000 plus condoms during an event. So for as many people that you may probably, or that they may see people not using, there are just as many people who do. And one thing we also realize is people take them home. And I would much rather that we're providing that for people to take them home, then we know they're at least using them as well.
It is quite revealing when the lights come up, isn't it, after the event?
When the lights come on, you can see the condoms and the lube sachets completely strewn across the floor. It's really incredible. And these are used ones. So, we definitely have first-hand evidence that they're being very well used.
Pleased to hear it, Antoine. How long is it now since the last Recon party?
The last Recon party we did was in December 2019. And we always do, I guess one of our better London events is our end of year party. It's one that's become a little infamous. People travel from the US, from all across Europe for it as well. We are certainly missing it. We missed not having one last year, and we're now, still thinking about whether or not we will be able to do one this year.
Fingers crossed. We have heard rumours of the first parties. I'm going to come back to that again in just a second. But during the past year, not a lot to do then, Antoine. I know you're still, for example, in touch with your family in the Bahamas.
Yeah, during the past year, I wouldn't say there has been a lot less to do work-wise than I would usually have, because I'm on a plane every few weeks and traveling around. I have to say I miss seeing the woman at the BA Lounge. But Recon has kept going and we've stayed really busy. We've started a number of projects. We started doing a podcast and doing lots of other bits. We've taken our events online, so we're doing the virtual events as well. So that's been quite a lot. But the not being able to travel to see my family and to see my friends is something that's definitely, taken its toll. My mom's not very happy that, she can't come back and that I can't come. And sometimes I think introducing her to WhatsApp was a good thing, and it might also have been a curse because she doesn't do anything else but video call.
Tell me, what does this mean, Antoine? Hard head bird don't make good soup.
This is a very, I'm not sure if other people use it, but it's something in the Bahamas that's used very often. And it's basically a saying, if people who are stubborn will always learn the hard way,
People who are stubborn.
will very often learn the hard way.
I see. Thank you very much for that. You see, I read your Facebook feed. Also, apropos of that, let's give this company a plug because I love the look of her food. Kiva's Food and Rum Cake Company.
Keva's Food and Rum Cake, yeah. She has become a very good friend. She used to run a very famous restaurant in Nassau, in Lyford Key, which is similar to the Beverly Hills. So it's the Beverly Hills of the Bahamas. And she ran like the main restaurant at the club there. She was married to an Irish guy, they've got kids, and she moved to London just last year from Ireland, basically mid-pandemic. So she's doing her bits and she's doing lots of testing and she's planning to open a Bahamian restaurant here in London. So we're very much looking forward to that when things start to shift and change, but her food is absolutely gorgeous.
I've seen the pictures, so you can look this up online, and that's Keva, spelled Keva.
Yeah.
Antoine, I was absolutely appalled to read a couple of years ago about a family tragedy. Can you bear to give us the details of it?
Yeah, I think just a month ago now marked the 3rd year anniversary of the murder of my younger brother. I guess that's what happens in many places, and people often don't think these things happen in paradise, but they do. They happen everywhere. The wealth disparity, the rich-poor divide gets even wider. He was a young guy, professional, did very well for himself, had a nice job, a nice house, a nice car, and someone decided that they was going to rob him. They held him up at gun and knife point, 3 guys. He was carjacked, robbed. They shot him 5 times in the chest and left him on the side of the street to die. I think it was one of the most horrible things, I've ever had to live through, was my mother's voice on the other side of the phone. And, at the time that she rang me was 5 a.m. here, and I had just gotten up. And just as I got up, the phone rang. And it was, my mom in absolute hysterics telling me what had happened. I went into work and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I have to go home. And I think I consider myself very fortunate that they were, completely 100% behind me. Do whatever you need to do. And the next day I was on a plane down to the Bahamas. So, and it's, I'm guessing for parents, you never think that you will have to bury your kids. And for me, with my younger brother, we were always making plans and talking about things. And I'd only spoken to him the day before. He does this trip to go to Trinidad for Carnival every year. So I give him the older brother talk, make sure when you go, you behave yourself and and be careful and la la la, and let me know when you're back. Like most people who travel for Carnival, they're incommunicado for days at a time, because he's having fun. And he had a wonderful future ahead of him, which was sadly, cut short. Something I've not gotten over.
What was your brother's name?
Kino.
Kino.
Yeah, my brother's name was Kino.
When you think about him today, what are your memories?
I've got lots of, it's very interesting. We always had, we could always talk. And it was interesting that, when I left the Bahamas, I think for a while he accused me of leaving him behind and leaving him on his own. And it did take some time, to like rebuild, our friendship, not just as brothers, but we were friends. And it was beautiful that we became friends again. So we were always, he would message me 2 o'clock in the morning, this is happening. And I have really good memories actually of his last trip. He came to London with another one of his best friends, taking them around and showing them about. And he was really excited about, life here and wanting to come back and visit again. Um, there are good memories of us playing tennis together as kids, practicing our instruments together. Sometimes we'd have duets. If I was on flute, he was on saxophone. Eventually he came into the same school that I went to. So it's like looking after him in school. And I really was, I think, the ideal, big brother figure for him. So we've got lots of fun memories and stories and things that we giggle about.
So only one terrible memory, but a lot of happy ones. Can you consider ever perhaps thinking about retiring back to the Bahamas?
That's a difficult one. I think I'm so far removed from that way of life right now. I think the only thing that would really convince me to go back would be if something were to happen to my mum. Otherwise, it is going to always be, I think, somewhere nice to go for a relaxing vacation. I love going down. I don't normally rest. I need a vacation after that vacation. You spend all your time running around, seeing friends and family. I eat more food than I ever should. I probably drink more than I ever should. And I party more than I probably should, because everyone's so happy to see you all the time. So it's like catching up with everyone. And it's really great. I love going back and switching off. But at the moment, I don't see myself, thinking of it as a retirement option. Not quite yet.
Okay, well, in that case, we're very happy that you're going to be here for the foreseeable future.
Oh, absolutely.
We can talk about the immediate future now because, as I say, I've just had confirmation of the first 2 club nights that have been confirmed. They're in June and July right here in London. So there's light at the end of the tunnel now. So clubs are going to reopen both in the UK and around the world. What is the club scene going to be like?
I still don't know. In my mind, I think it could be absolute mayhem. It's going to be a stampede. People who have been pent up for the past year. I mean, we all know that there are a few people who have been breaking the rules, but a lot of other people have really been staying at home and doing what they need to do. And I think when the freedom comes that they can let out some of that pent up aggression and release some of that energy, the clubs are going to be really full, and I think there are going to be lots of sore bums and cocks around, come summertime. The other, I guess, the event producer side of me thinks about the safety aspect of it also, and just thinking like from my standpoint, how much of a responsibility do I have to make sure that restarting is going to be done in a more gradual basis. We would like to hope that the Gov's date of 21st of June is actually going to be it, and it'll go back to normal. But we don't know whether or not there will still be some kind of social distancing guidelines in place, or whether people will be required to have a negative or vaccine, certificate to get into venues. And I don't think I would necessarily want to take the risk right now of putting so much into planning to only 3 weeks later have to dash it all away again.
Has the first Recon party been confirmed?
About 85%, yes.
Okay.
And we won't do it it's not, well, the first play party won't come in summer. At the moment, the way that it's looking, we might attempt to do something social first, which is good. It's something that we've become known for over the years of hosting these kinds of social, non-sexual events as well. And we also realize that has been an incredible shift. And I think post lockdown, it's also going to be something that's very vital, because there are people who just want to come out and see their mates and have a drink. So I think providing this is going to be really good. And I think the play party will come a little bit further down the road.
Exactly. Sex isn't the be all and end all. We just want to get out and give people a hug.
Yes.
can't come soon enough. Antoine, alas, we have to leave it there, but only here on YouTube. We're now going to get Down and Dirty on Patreon, but you've got to be a subscriber. If you're not, there's the link. If you are a subscriber, join us right now. We're there waiting for you. But right now, I have to say, here on YouTube, it's bye-bye. Thank you very much, Antoine.
Bye-bye.
Join me again next week, will you please? Because my guest will be the filmmaker Fred Kino. We've got a lot in common because I've had a lot of trouble with censorship, and now he has as well. His entire archive has been removed from YouTube. I'll want to know why. Will you join us then? Thank you very much indeed. Till then, for now, bye-bye.